We're coming to the end of what's been an interesting year for video games. The past couple of years have had their fair share of ups and downs, but with that comes the promise of something even greater in the years to come. 2021 might not have been at the pinnacle of honourable years for video games. I mean, the year was rocked with several titles that haven't really done great, although there have been some genuinely good titles as well. This year was filled with reboots, remasters and sequels to some dear franchises, as well as new IPs that were set out to make an impression, some of whom shine brighter than others. We don't really call it a disappointing year since the world has just recovered from a global catastrophe, but it did have a few games that we didn't really like. Today though, we aren't here for that, we're here to talk about the best. This list isn't in any specific order because all of the games on this list do deserve to be here. So without further ado, here's my selection of the 10 best games of 2021. Returnal's a roguelike game that's really turned heads ever since it first released in April. The game makes you keep coming back for more as you die time and time again, but don't be too surprised when you do die, because you totally will. It's a formula that seems to work brilliantly and gives you a grand single-player experience. Returnal puts you in the shoes of a space scout, exploring a strange planet that just keeps changing. Every time you die, you have to start all the way at the beginning without the precious items you've managed to collect over your previous try. It's a fantastic blend of everything action and adventure, from shooting to collecting and exploring, that makes you try and try and try again. Returnal is an investment that you must make for your PS5.
My name is Raz, and today is my first official day on the job.
Here we are 16 years later and Psychonauts has a sequel. The first game was somewhat well received, so you can sort of picture the hype the sequel got on its announcement, but to the surprise of many, this game has seemingly flown under the radar. Luckily for the sequel, there's only good news since its launch, offering a beautiful original adventure that takes you through picturesque landscapes of shapes and colours. First-timers won't have any problem getting the hang of this game, as it's made for newcomers and old fans alike. Raz's psionic abilities like telekinesis, Psyblast and pyrokinesis to solve puzzles and fight enemies are evergreen, giving it the charm of the previous game but adding a whole lot of modern depth. Several favourites of the previous game also re-emerged, giving revisiting fans a treat to relish. The game's a fun mix of platforming goodness, wonderful visuals and a bucket full of giggles. Another must-play in my opinion.
It all means nothing until you step inside.
Now, technically, Halo Infinite still hasn't completely released yet, but this one has to get featured on this list for obvious reasons. The franchise has always kept its standards really high while giving us one-of-a-kind multiplayer experiences since the debut of Halo Combat Evolved over 20 years ago. This same multiplayer experience can be witnessed in Infinite as well. Halo Infinite serves as a spiritual reboot to the series that will prove to be a starting point for new and old players alike, withdrawing from a numerical sequel system and incorporating elements that could shape the future of this franchise. If you were to fill the shoes of the Forza Horizon franchise, you'd be getting into some really big shoes. The Forza Horizon seems to always get its open world absolutely correct. You get the tools to customize and the freedom to go where you choose. It's like an RPG car game. Well, kind of at least. Forza Horizon 5 features more than 500 uniquely functioning vehicles and is set in a fictionalized Mexico. The game could easily be the prettiest on the market right now, especially if you're on a next-gen console or a high-end system. It just isn't a pretty face though. It's a complete package of great racing, intricate customization, and of course, open world exploring. It's the kind of quality that we seek in any video game.
Surprise!
What do you want, Nefarious?
We're going to a dimension where I always win!
Ratchet and Clank have really kept up the standards with regards to their games, and their latest Rift Apart is nothing short of that standard. It's the kind of game that makes the PS5's price feel justified. Rift Apart gives you something fantastic to look at while also being a good source of action and adventure. The incredible detail the game has to offer is awe-inspiring, even though the visuals aren't supposed to be super lifelike. I mean, it is Ratchet and Clank after all, isn't it? The combat is like a festival of colours, and the storytelling is on par with some of Hollywood's finest blockbusters. There's a lot for you to do in the game, game, from intense firefights to aerial acrobatics and head-hurting puzzles, so it's safe to say that you're not going to get bored with this one. Don't worry if you're new to the franchise, because Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart does a great job at being as unique as a standalone game. This is a must-buy for any PS5 owner. The Resident Evil franchise has been responsible for scaring us silly since 1996, and with Village comes yet another spine-chilling experience for next-gen consoles. The game's a hectic, uneven rollercoaster ride involving werewolves, vampires, Frankensteins, and of course your friendly neighborhood zombies. Capcom's now so confident of this fear formula, it feels like sometimes they don't even try. I wouldn't be saying that if Village wasn't a good game though, because trust me, it is. Why would it be on this list otherwise? Ethan seems to have learned from his mistakes at Baker Homestead, being even more prepared in this one, but if he were truly prepared, he would have just stayed at home. It's an experience that puts in a super creepy atmosphere that the RE franchise has honed over the years. RE Village is an experience to remember, especially for people visiting the series for the first time. It might not be as effective as an experience for old fans, but it is still the stuff of nightmares. A unique shooter that had the gaming world talking about it ever since they dropped a trailer back in June 2019. It's the kind of shooter that's perfected the formula of replayability with an addictive time loop mechanic that's fun, yet genuinely takes time to master. In the single-player campaign, you get to play as either Colt or Juliana, depending on what you want to do. Colt wants to stop the time loop, while Julia, on the other hand, wants to protect the time loop. Let's just say they're at each other's throats the entire time. What really shines through is that if you fail to kill all enemies in the 24-hour period, they'll resurrect the next morning, and you have to start all over again. It's going to take some preparation to get them in the right place and at the right time, because you know if you don't, you'll never get out of this mess. You have a bunch of abilities and superpowers, along with the help of an array of weapons to choose from. Arcane Games really did a good job with this one. It's great to experiment on it, because you might loop so many times, you'll probably think that it's going to break the game or something. But don't worry, that's exactly what they want you to think. Deathloop is something that you must play.
Sonic! Wait!
Scarlet Nexus is a beautiful mashup of anime action and a JRPG storyline that will give you a decent 20 hours of fun. What really takes the cake though is how uniquely these two elements blend in. Players get to play as either Kasane or Yuto of the Other Suppression Force, entrusted to save the world from various monstrous mutants. Now, I know it might sound like your average action plot, but you must play the game to know how incredible the presentation of this really is. The combat is real-time, unlike so many other JRPGs we've come to be familiar with. You get special kinetic abilities that you can combine with standard attacks for a more superhero approach. Other than the main story, Scarlet Nexus gives you missions tailor-made to bring outside character development, and yes, many of them will have you go fetching things from here and there, but overall, there's plenty of fun to be had with this one. This might not be Bandai Namco's best, but it certainly is up there amongst its other grand titles. It certainly is fun for all anime enthusiasts out there.
Finish it. Finish it.
Agent 47's somewhat the Johnny Sins of assassinations, and with Hitman 3 you once again get to go around the world and impersonate a new range of roles previously unseen. Like in the previous Hitman games from IO Interactive, there's a tightly plotted narrative that's dotted with tasty assassination missions. The game perfectly lives up to the standards that the first two showed off. It's a very polished game, and it lets the player decide how things should go. The levels are intricately designed with a whole lot of things for you to mess with, from rat poison to unfortunate electrical accidents and a really dangerous wine press. Sometimes the game's so good that even failure feels like you've actually accomplished something. It's a wonderful package of murder and innovation that you can even play on PSVR. Even though Hitman 3 uses the same formula to succeed, it seems like this formula is going to last for a while.
How come monsters are never friendly?
Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is Eidos Montreal's rendition of easily one of the most popular sets of characters in the MCU, and of course from the original comics, all included with a story of its own. Featuring staples like Groot, Rocket, Gamora and Star-Lord, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is a game that should inspire devs who are looking to create a game franchise that's already popular in formats. There's so much happening in the game with new and surprising backstories you've not seen before, giving the story an almost what-if-esque alt-universe for you to explore. You play as Star-Lord, leading the team through combat and puzzles as you try not to ruin your own trip. The game's full of laughs, a grand story, an awesome action adventure, adventure and comes in a very visually pleasing package. We can't wait to see more of this franchise. Which games were your favourite from this year then? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this list, consider subscribing to Gaming Region and hitting that like button. You've got no idea how much that would help us out. As always, I'll see you in the next one.